everyone. I'm Michael Sainato with Real Progressives. This afternoon, our guests are my colleagues for our recent piece for Huffington Post that went up this afternoon. Walker Bragman, you've most likely seen his work on Paste Magazine, and Geoff Campbell, who's a South Florida activist, and he's got a big Twitter following. So I'm sure you are aware of Jeff Miami over on Twitter. Walker, could you just summarize our piece for a little bit? I'm going to share it out and make sure people, start seeing that we're talking. So.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. So you guys came to me and were like, hey, look at this. We found that all of these consultants who were hired by the DNC were attacking Sanders in the media during the primary. And we all thought that was strange. So we started looking into the consultants that the party hired. And as it turned out, the best paid consultants were all Clinton loyalists. And during the primary, the party's messaging really started to amplify narratives that Clinton's campaign was pushing. And of course, all of this time, the consultants in their spare time were going off and attacking Sanders in the media. That said, we can't say which consultants, how much of a personal influence an individual consultant had in the party's messaging, but that's the general idea.
And for those of you watching, I posted the article in the comments just now, so if you haven't seen it yet, check it out. Jeff, could you add your 2 cents into what we worked on and basically what you hope the response is from Democrats, Bernie supporters, and Clinton supporters?
Sure. So basically, we got tipped off when Donna released the book Hacked, and you noticed that they were, paying these 2 consultant firms a lot of money. She also mentioned that the DNC was broke. I noted that when I saw those 2 firms that were getting the most amount of money, that's when I noticed like certain consultants that work for them, and then we noticed that some of them had been writing certain things, either some outlet or had been going on CNN or MSNBC and saying bad things about Bernie or tweeting bad things about Bernie. And it just seemed to add to the narrative that everybody already understood, that it seemed like this, it was stacked in favor of Hillary Clinton. On the DNC itself was stacking in favor, and everyone thought it couldn't prove it. Everyone would tell us to quiet down. A lot of the Hillary Clinton supporters would be like, grow up, get over it. That didn't happen. But as we can see clearly here, they were favoring Hillary Clinton over Bernie once again. So it just helps, clearly state the fact that this was not a fair fight in the primary.
Right. And every criticism that we, every time some new piece of information comes out, it's like, oh, there was a secret agreement between Clinton's campaign and the DNC. Every time some new piece of information like that comes out, the response is, well, how did this immediately impact the primary? I mean, everybody seems to focus on vote counts. And that's always been the piece that's been missing. Like, how do you impact votes? I mean, Clinton's campaign having legal control of many aspects of the Democratic Party is problematic. But at the end of the day, if you want to make a claim that the primary is skewed, you have to show, some impact on the race. And I think that's what our piece kind of does.
Exactly.
And one of the alarming things is one of the consultants we cite, Jen O'Malley Dillon, is she's a partner at Precision Strategies. She was cited in articles from media outlets and WikiLeaks emails that she was working for the Clinton campaign in the DNC during the primaries. She is the chair of the DNC Unity Reform Commission. So that just I think highlights how what to expect out of the Unity Reform Commission, and why we haven't seen anything really from it that would give a sense to progressives that the DNC is changing at all. If she is running the show. And
that's very problematic.
Very problematic. I'm interested to see if she is called to resign from it or how they respond to it. I predict they'll probably just try to ignore it and try to pretend that these facts don't exist at all. But these firms. Precision has been cited in other articles, but no one's really dug into them. No one's mentioned SKD Knickerbocker really.
That name, man. Someone on Twitter was like, "It sounds like an old robber baron from the 1800s."
And that's what they are.
Well, they're owned by Mark Penn, who is a former Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton advisor, and he is the one that wrote that New York Times op-ed that Democrats need to embrace Wall Street from a few months ago that people were making fun of. So,
okay,
it's funny, but I mean, to a certain extent, though, you would expect Clinton to have these allies within the party, more allies certainly than Sanders, because I mean, she's been a Democrat for 40 some odd years, however long. When did she make the switch from Goldwater Girl to True Blue?
Yeah, sometime in the 60s, but
yeah, I mean, you'd expect her, somebody who's worked her way up in the Democratic Party, with help, of course, but somebody who's been involved that long to have these built-in allies. And I think what I'd like to see, and maybe what a lot of other people would like to see, is that there's an effort on the part of the party to reform a system where you either have a lot of money or you've put in the sweat equity to become the candidate. It should be based on merit or how popular you are with voters. And I think we saw a little bit of that in 2008. That when it was a fair primary, you had an outside candidate just kind of come in and determine the narrative of the race. It wasn't the party and one candidate's allies saying we're gonna maintain control of the narrative regardless of who's possible and who's not.
And they almost did. Even Clinton was the front runner initially in that primary race, but really what helped Obama, I think, was there were like 10 people in that race, and many of them were elected officials. They were in office, and there were 5 people in the primaries this time around, and 3 of the other ones no one had ever heard of, and they were former officials. They really had no clout in the party to begin with, and not really, and they really didn't have any allies. Martin O'Malley, Lincoln Chafee, and Jim Webb, no one knew who they were. They aren't in office, and they're not particularly rich people or deeply connected within their own state parties. Or
Lessig.
Yeah.
I like Lessig. For what it's worth, I like Lessig.
Yeah. I was going to say they also lessened the debates, so that's going to, and we saw that in the emails. They admitted that helped Hillary.
Well, it was certainly an effort, I think, to say we are going to determine how this race plays out, what the issues are that define it. Because they did. They focused it around women making history, which is obviously a noble goal of the Democratic Party, and they focused it around elevating Trump. But at the same time, that necessarily meant downplaying narratives that Sanders was running on, which created an opening really, for Donald Trump to come in, because if you're not addressing the economic issues that are driving people to these outsider candidates, because it hurts the one that you want, that just leaves a vacuum that obviously Trump was able to fill.
Exactly.
And now we're here. Sorry?
No, go ahead. I mean, it's just frustrating because we're still, you've already seen some comments, people complaining, making the same, anti-Bernie generic insults that have no substance and really don't discuss the content. But there's also, the same line criticism. We have Trump. Why are you discussing, these internal party issues? But this is a huge problem within the Democratic Party still. I don't want to get too much into what we've been starting to work on as a follow-up, but if you look on the DNC's financial disclosures, even this year, all the employees, all the DNC appointments members, all the vendors and consultants, they're all like former Clinton staffers, Clinton alums from the campaign. And you don't see any of the grassroots Bernie people embracing that as well. So it's really they're just created a shell of these former Clinton people to survive at the detriment of the whole entire party. You can see this in the DNC's fund. That's what the like Aaron Sorkin West Wing fantasy of like neocons and neoliberals living together in harmony as fancy elite professionals, not having to engage or connect with voters, especially in areas where they don't, donors don't, particularly reside. So I mean, we need to have more of these conversations, and hopefully we can start to push the message on how this whole consultant lobbyist class of political elites impacts the Democratic Party and really undermines the party from developing an opposition to the Republican Party.
At the same time, though, that structure that was so powerful during the 2016 primary, it really isn't there as much anymore. I mean, obviously there are holdouts, but I think that while it is important to acknowledge what happened so that these things can change in the future, it's also important to acknowledge how far the grassroots have really come since then. I mean, the national conversation has completely changed. I think there was even a Washington Post op-ed, there is no war for the heart of the Democratic Party. The left has already won. I'm obviously ruining the title here, but that's huge. During the election, the op-ed board for WAPO would only put out like anti-Sanders stuff. So this is it shows that the needle is moving.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's on the activists. It's on the people who are out there fighting in the trenches to kind of keep up the hard work, keep
right.
standing up to this power structure that exists, and we'll be there reporting on it. But they have the hard job.
Right. Well, I think the more you call this out, the less it can happen in the next elections. The more you call out how they were putting their thumb on the scale, people will know to look for it again. People will say, "Oh, this is that same trick they were using last time," and yeah, it's going to take a lot of people calling it out, journalists and activists, I think.
Yeah, and I'm excited. I'm excited just because there's so much that mainstream journalists just don't touch.
Right.
That is worth looking into. So that's the that makes me very happy. It's kind of a nice little niche to fill.
Yep.
And this was I had fun writing this piece. Did you guys have fun? I had fun.
Yes.
I had fun. I didn't have so much fun waiting for it. We worked on it for like 3 weeks, and then it was like 2 weeks. It was in like editing, purgatory, and we were like, when's it gonna come out? When's it gonna come out? And finally came out today, which is obviously a relief, especially because the Unitary Reform Commission is ahead a few days. But I would have liked to have seen it come out a little bit closer to when people were still talking about the Donna Brazil book. But hopefully people still pay attention to it, especially with everything else going on. And I think this piece,
though, for the wait. I mean, we definitely, the original draft that we went through was, to those watching, we had several drafts, maybe about 7 or 8, and we would be messaging each other at like 10, 12 at night, like, okay, I just updated this, like, I sent the editors a few drafts, so in fact, the final one, they had to just kind of take the best parts from each of our works and put them together and work with us. I think that timing obviously is a tough thing to get, but it is a better, in my opinion, stronger piece now. I think it's very fair. And I think it's just an important issue. I mean, this can't happen again. Right?
Exactly. I mean, if you want people involved, it cannot happen again. That's the biggest argument. People are like, why should I vote? Why should I be a Democrat? Why should I do anything? So, I mean, if we can call it out, correct it, then there's plenty of reason to vote. And there's plenty of reason to get involved, in my opinion.
I would say there's always a reason to get involved. Whether or not you're going to be, winning is
true.
But yeah, I'm happy. I think we did a fairly good job. This is a little self-congratulatory.
Well, and it's a frame of reference for when 2019 starts. It's going to be a shit show of whether Bernie gets in the race and who else gets in the race, and it's just going to be you go back to like weeks where like what happened came out, or when the Donna Brazil story came out, and you just like look at Twitter and like Facebook and how like bickering everyone is. It's going to be what it's going to be like for probably from like April 2019 all the way to once the primaries finish, because I doubt it's going to be a quick race. Yeah. But I mean, this is one of the big things to look out for.
An inevitable march to Kamala Harris. I thought we already decided this.
Oh man.
Or Joe Biden, or whatever.
We lost Franken. Franken's out.
Yeah, no, Franken's gone. No presidential race for him.
Cory Booker. Don't forget Cory.
Oh, right, of course. Hi, Allison.
Hey.
So I mean, okay. So who do you guys think is gonna be the candidate? I really don't think it will be Kamala Harris or Joe Biden, frankly. If I had to, right now put money on the table, I would definitely say it's not going to be either one of those people, because, like, look, it could change. Kamala Harris is kind of a blank slate right now. She doesn't have many positions. She signed on to several significant pieces of legislation that Sanders has been pushing. That's great, but she's hobnobbing with Clinton donors, and she doesn't really strike me as some. I mean, right now, what's needed isn't just somebody who's taking the right positions. It's somebody who's taking the right positions and who will actively fight for those positions in the face of a Republican Party that has thrown tradition and bipartisanship to the wind. So I don't think she's really shown me that.
Right.
And it could change. She's only been in office for a little bit, but I think it'll be somebody from the Sanders wing of the party.
Well, people were speculating on Kamala, especially because she hired, I think, Clinton's Iowa director that brought her onto her staff. Other than like she met with Clinton donors in the Hamptons 2 weekends in a row over the summer. But I think it's going to be really interesting whether Clinton backs a candidate right off the bat, or it's just exploits her constant presence in the media and over the party and tries to dictate through mainstream media outlets who gets paid attention to. So that's going to be a different dynamic. So Hillary's not going to go away. They're going to be like, oh, this is going to be Kamala. What do you think, Hillary? Every month, every primary race, and whether she gets actively involved or not, it's like a shadow that's going to hover over the whole primary contest.
I'm sure she'll.
That depends on 2018, though, to an extent, because if in 2018 there's a progressive blowout and a bunch of people get primaried and a lot of new blood gets into office, the narrative, that needle that we were talking about earlier, is going to move even more, and people like Clinton are going to be, I think, somewhat irrelevant. I mean, she's already somewhat irrelevant.
I'm going to answer. Somebody asked, and I'd say never Chelsea. Somebody asked.
Chelsea Clinton?
Yeah, someone asked. I saw it pop up.
Oh, not happening.
They're talking about in Politico yesterday that Bill Schur article was saying that Chelsea should run for Senate in Arkansas because even if she loses, she would show the party that they could, something like that, some bullshit like that. Like she would move to Arkansas, and people in Arkansas don't like the Clintons. Trump won there by 27 points, and they've had enough of them for 3 decades to the point where it's a frustrating state for Democrats who have no political power whatsoever in that state anymore. But the Clintons had every potential to do that. So I got quoted in that article because I wrote an article saying that Chelsea Clinton, because when the Hill was earlier in January, when the Hill was running a Chelsea Clinton pro tweet piece every day, I wrote just a piece that this would be the worst thing for Democrats. Other than if she did run and lose, then it might reaffirm that the lessons they should learn from the 2016 election. Because what you have is those that small percentage of Peter Dow Clinton loyalists. They're holding on to their shattered worldview and their shattered norms of what their politics are supposed to be, and what they had the whole Clinton worldview that was supposed to be the mainstream worldview, the mainstream norms, everything they think is right, and that after Trump won, that got undermined and shattered. So now they're just still the same exact tweets, complaints, insults every week. Just Peter Dow, blind, delusional outrage of blaming everyone else and every little scapegoat and excuse, or anything Trump does is Hillary was right.
Yeah.
She wasn't going to oppose Trump. She wasn't going to say, "Oh, Trump will be a decent president." I'm running against him, but he'll be a decent president. What are these people, smoking? It's just
I don't understand I mean, I do. We were talking about this earlier. They're upset about a lot of these people are upset about access. A lot of the journalists, especially the people, the Joy Reids out there, I think, are upset about access that they would have had, but don't now. A lot of these people staked a lot on this election. They had their candidate. They believed in their candidate, and they were so sure that they were the ones who had their finger on the pulse of American politics. And when something goes that drastically wrong, that could be shattering. I don't want to make light of the photograph, that famous photograph of that Clinton supporter, in tears, like cry of agony at the result of the election. But
read Lena Dunham's. You read that? What Lena Dunham wrote after? He wrote like some little short essay about her sadness after when Hillary lost, and she walks home and takes a shower crying.
People should blame her more. The week before the election day, she came out with that like Pantsuit Nation song, and like in the video, she's like, "I wonder if I'm hurting Clinton's chances or something."
She was one of the worst.
She's terrible. You have Jen Kirkman, who still complains. She blocked me on Twitter, but she still complains about people not attending her shows because of and blaming Bernie people for it. It's just so hilarious to see some of these characters who have built followings grifting on Clinton loyalism and are just making just a joke out of themselves, whether it's like Peter Dow with Barrett with the authentication codes or any of these people. You saw Eric Garland's Twitter anti-Bernie Putin Twitter thread today.
It would be disturbing it would be. I think it would be more amusing if it weren't very disturbing. That's what I meant. Eric Garland accusing Sanders of being a Russian agent, Joy Reid basically calling him a misogynist based on his body language, where he's, gesticulating with his arms and says to Jane, "Don't stand there." He's moving his arms. That's dangerous. That's character assassination, in a very real way that I don't think. Obviously, there were people who hated Hillary and everything Hillary, no matter what, Hillary evil. But I'd like to think that it's not the mainstream people who are saying, the outlandish stuff about Clinton. In this case, it is the mainstream people saying outlandish things about Sanders, and that's very problematic. Trying to clean up, the mess that Reid can make with one tweet is like trying to pee out a forest fire.
Yeah,
it's very frustrating.
It was nice to see how dunked on she got for those tweets, and how she didn't say anything until 3 days later when the Young Turks reported on it. But that's those kind of attacks. They've been pushed into, where they have to make up things or really stretch the truth as much as possible and dig up this crap and blatantly and obviously misinterpret it just to push this false narrative, just to keep this anti-Bernie hate going with their own followers.
Well, this is where we get into the narrative. They cost themselves the election by focusing in on the wrong narratives. And in retrospect, it's very obvious how this happened, right? You get out of the Great Recession, barely. Most of the gains go to the top. You then run on look how much progress we've made, and people go home to their, to their houses that they're still paying off their mortgage. Maybe can't afford their mortgage if they get sick. They work low wage jobs. They're struggling. They're one illness away from complete bankruptcy. They can't afford to go to college or send their kids to college or whatever the case is. Hearing, America is already great, and hearing, like, look how much we've gained. Isn't it time we make history? Like, and elect the first female president of the United States? Like, that ranks very low on your list of priorities if those other basic needs are not met. And, I mean, you all know this. And I think everybody watching this kind of understands that it wasn't Sanders that cost her the race. It was just her being out of touch. These people being out of touch.
Yes.
Of course, we're the privileged ones for pointing that out.
Right.
Well, even you have these consultants that they're not, SKD doesn't do any work in the states that Clinton needed to win. Those consultants, they've, never been to Ohio, Florida. People focus, what I think is revisionism on Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, because those are the closest states. But, Obama won 6 states. That Clinton lost he won in 2012, that she lost in 2016 to an orange clown. Like, I mean, they really just ignored the whole resentment most Americans feel in favor of trying to develop this like neoconservative, neoliberal unity panel. Where she brought on Tim Kaine, had Michael Bloomberg and a former CIA director speak at the Democratic National Convention, like, police are good, the intelligence agencies are good. I worked at the State Department, I'm the most qualified, and I have 40 Republican foreign policy guys, who endorse me.
Like, my message to ISIS, we will find you and we will kill you. Like, it's met with chants, USA. That was my favorite.
And turning away buses of volunteers from Michigans because Robbie Mook thought the algorithm said they didn't need to be wasted there. So, blame the people in Michigan who didn't vote, but don't blame the moron who said, no, don't send volunteers or resources there. We don't need them. Send them to Chicago and New Orleans to make sure we win the popular vote.
Mm.
I mean, I got no defense for that. I was going to try to bring like let's, maybe he's not a moron. Maybe he just made a mistake. And I have no doubt Robbie Mook is a very intelligent person. We don't actually think Robbie Mook is a moron, but that was a really big mistake. Like, really big mistake. Taking the quote-unquote blue wall for granted, or calling it a blue wall when it's gone back and forth in presidential elections for years. I mean, that's a serious miscalculation. Also, we know that they didn't that they really didn't want anybody else's input on how they were running the campaign. They thought they had all the information they needed. They had all the data. I mean, everybody that we spoke to, at least for this piece, there was an air of, we did what we could and we just came up short. But I think that lets them off a little easy.
Yeah.
To say the least.
I don't think they were reaching out or listening to the Bernie supporters or even his team that much. That could have maybe helped possibly win an election.
It might have. I mean, dare I say, bringing on Sanders as a VP candidate, bringing on Sanders as anything. No, Susan is right. They did not want anything. They didn't. thought that they had it. They had the best models. They had the best algorithm. We welcome our algorithm overlord.
Let's not use any algorithms next time. I don't think they work.
Certain things that you can't fake, and connection with people. I think connecting with people can never be overshadowed in importance by an algorithm.
Sure.
And at a very fundamental level, Clinton was unable to relate to people.
Well, that and she shied away from embracing any issue remotely left because they were going after Mitt Romney, moderate Republican voters. So, she didn't even go to Flint after the primaries. Didn't mention it at all. In states like that, it's one big issue where that would resonate with people. Like, oh, she gives a crap about Flint. Maybe she should give a crap about my community or something like that. But really didn't. Trump went to Flint more than Clinton did in the general election, and she lost those counties around Flint, or she won the Genesee County in Flint, but barely. And if she won it to the extent that Obama did 4 years before, she probably would have won Michigan. But it's just like little things like that where it's how can you try to place the blame on anything or anyone else when these blatantly obvious mistakes and arrogance, examples of arrogance are just like beaming out from these places and what went wrong.
Well, this gets back to our article. I mean, they never had to change their narrative. Throughout the entire primary, Clinton never had to adapt because the party was running interference for her. I mean, Clinton's campaign back in April of 2015 decided we're going to elevate Trump as a Pied Piper. We're going to drag the Republicans so far to the right, we're basically just going to run against them and sweep our way into the White House. And that, you see that strategy kind of play out. The Democratic Party adopts that strategy, starts elevating Trump and insulating her from the rising economic narrative. They downplay them. So she never had to adapt. And so by the time the general election came around, she thought everything was hunky-dory. I get to run against my perfect Pied Piper. I don't need to do anything. I can just run as I've been running. And it was,
I can take a month off. I can even faint and maybe win.
Anything can happen. I will still win because Trump is so out there. And all the while, Trump was saying, wait a minute, I have this avenue that's been opened up for me. I can kind of tap into the issues that Sanders is running on, and I can rail against free trade. I can rail against hedge fund guys. Of course, all of this very insincere. I think we're seeing that now. And Clinton's trying. She is trying to pick up the suburban Republicans. That's very astute. But you have to remember that Republicans kicked out establishment Republicans in 2010. They're not running from the Tea Party because they're too far right. They're running from the establishment because it's too out of touch. So Democrats running as the establishment Republicans aren't going to pick up any of those votes because why? They don't want them back, and the left certainly doesn't want them. So you have this perfect, storm of failures that kind of came together and put somebody who I do believe is deeply unqualified in the White House.
Sad but true.
Yeah. And what we're seeing, you mentioned before, we're moving the needle to the left, but that's happening from the bottom up, and I still think you have the DNC and like those the top where Charles Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, that those people in the Democratic Party leadership are still hanging on for dear life on everything that the Democratic Party has failed in trying to win with over the past decade.
It's very true. But I will say this to the people watching this: if you really want to see change, there are a few things that have to happen. One, people have to get elected. That I think is the main thing. That is going to happen from the bottom up. But two, the party needs to start winning more, because a lot of these more establishment Democrats aren't necessarily sold on any particular ideology. They just want to get elected, and they're going to do whatever they think is most likely to get them elected. So if you start seeing progressive policies winning more, you're going to have establishment Democrats adopting, progressive policies. And I mean, look, they can't all be leaders. Some of them will be party line votes, and that's okay. That's fine. You need that. And yes, of course, election integrity. I think that's the other thing. You need to make sure that 2016 does not happen. But you do that by getting people from the ground up into the apparatus and getting involved and staying involved. And that's something that's hard, because you don't always win. It's not always gratifying. Sometimes it's an uphill battle and it sucks. I mean, it was soul crushing. I was at the DNC in July of 2016, and I watched Sanders speak, and I watched the delegates, Sanders delegates there. It was crippling for them. It was very, very emotional. I mean, there was a walkout, protests on all 4 days. It's hard to have that in your mind and go through that and to say, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to be there the next day, and I'm going to be there the next day after that. It certainly doesn't mean voting. I'm certainly not saying, vote, blue no matter who or whatever like that. I'm not telling anybody who to vote for. I'm just saying staying involved in politics is a tough thing to do, but I think it's very important right now, especially because it's a pivotal moment to do it.
I would add that definitely you should be getting involved, and I know all the people on there that hate the quote-unquote Dem-enter. I don't even care for that term. I don't care what you want to call it. Get involved. I mean, if you want to go get involved in the Republican Party and yell at them about progressive goals, good luck to yourself. But you should go into the Democratic Party and just fight for what we've been fighting for as progressives. If you liked Bernie Sanders and you cared about his message, why wouldn't you be inside the Democratic Party demanding that they change, demanding that they do things differently, demanding that they follow the rules? There's just so many things you could be doing, and I can promise you they're not going to be happy that you're there, but other people around at these meetings will hear you and they'll be like, wait, that sounds right. The same way people, when they got to hear Bernie's message, were like, oh, that sounds like something I kind of agree with. It's a similar thing. You got to get in there and let people know what you think. If you let the Democratic establishment that you think we're all falling down for, or whatever you think in a Dem-enter, if you let them sit up there and talk, they're going to obviously keep pushing that same agenda, and all the people that are not as woke are just going to sit there and eat it up. So you need people, and in Miami we've done that. We've got in there and we've made a lot of changes. The party's a lot further left. I can guarantee you the Republican Party in Miami Beach will never be progressive. In fact, we've got establishment Democrats who help the Republican Party, like Debbie Wasserman Schultz in Miami, South Florida. So complaining that Dem exit is like you're kissing the Democrats' ass is the most stupid, illogical comment you can make on the issue. You don't have to give them $1. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. You just get involved and you push your goals, your progressive goals, and you push progressive candidates that are there running as Democrats. If there are candidates that have a shot that are Green Party or some other type of party in your community, it's possible in other places, not in Miami, Florida at the moment. But I wouldn't be against helping that candidate. I'm not saying you shouldn't help someone outside of the Democratic Party, but right now it is a two-party system. And if you want to make any changes policy-wise in our government, you're going to have to get behind one of those, at least fight from inside for a bit while you do something on the outside. Just claiming Dementer is a lost cause actually did the lost cause.
Well, especially at the state level, right? We've got a census coming in 2020, and that's when the House districts are redrawn and the state ones. And the last time, in 2010, Democrats kind of took a back seat, and this was, I think, a problem that Obama had. He didn't really see the necessity or the importance of going and combating the GOP's red map strategy. And they went in and they redistricted the House, and now we've had a decade of solid Republican House control, which stymies any progress that you want to make. So it doesn't matter if you want anything that is not the Republican status quo, anything, whether you're an establishment Democrat, whether you're a progressive, you need the House. So winning those state legislative seats is so important. That's really, I think the key here is that if you need a majority in the state legislature and governorships, those two. But yeah, getting active is it's very important, and we'll be there to report on it. Because that's the easy part.
Yeah. Well, we'll sign out now. So if you guys want to add anything before we go, feel free. But for anyone watching and came in later, the article that we published today together in Huffington Post is at the top of the comment section. And keep an eye out. We have 2 more articles that'll probably be out in the next month. Not this week, but sometime soon. We'll keep on those as well. So
yeah, the article, check it out, share it with your. Somebody said share it with your great grandmother. Print it out, put copies on your dog, and unleash it in the mall. Get the word out. I think we put a lot of work into it, and I'm glad to see that people kind of are interested.
I saw someone say that the tax cut is going to be devastating. Yes, it's going to be devastating. I agree.
If it passes, it still has to go through the House, and then it goes back to the Senate if they modify it. We'll see. I hope it does. I personally hope it doesn't pass. I also think net neutrality is something else that deserves a shout out. Bill Clinton's allies are funding anti-net neutrality ads. Pay attention on your Twitter if you see "Unleash the Net." That is funded by the Progressive Policy Institute, which is a third way. I'm just kind of throwing everything out here. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Good night, everyone.